Cartoon Network has some absolutely goated shows like Regular Show, Courage the Cowardly Dog, Ed, Edd and Eddy, and Ben 10. All of these shows have received a movie in one way or another. Courage, I'm looking at you. And unlike the others, Ben 10 has a live-action adaptation. I remember this movie slapping so hard when I was younger, which is why I'm here today to see whether this movie is worth your time or if it should stay in 2007 with the iPhone, Windows Vista, and the B-movie game. Whose idea was this? Does God stay in heaven and fear for what he has created? The movie starts off with this Tron wannabe causing a ruckus by blowing up the entire town for who knows why. Then Heat Blast comes in and his balls are low. It sounds like they hired Corpse Husband as the voice actor. Our guy gets absolutely skadoinked on and put in a SpongeBob-sized bubble. Some cops pop in out of nowhere and the foot ninjas from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles show up and start kicking their butts. Heat Blast frees himself from the bubble and shows them who's boss by giving some of them concussions and the others some of the... He murders the off-brand Darth Vader, and before the cops talk to him, he zooms off and turns into the absolute gangster, Ben Tennyson. His cousin Gwen and his grandfather show up and she gets mad at him for committing arson across the entire town, and all he has to say to that is, oops. Now a sick-ass intro plays, and you can tell that this movie is going to get so many awards. What's that? Oh, people didn't like this movie? But it's going so well so far. All right. I guess people don't like this movie. It has a 1.9 on Letterboxd and a 47% audience score from the Tomato Farmer. We start back up with Ben patrolling the streets and breaking so many laws on his way to school. Absolute hooligan behavior. He overhears some girls yapping about Heat Blast and tries to be a Rizzler and flops miserably. He surprises Gwen and they yap for a bit about the school yearbook and he awkwardly poses for Gwen. And this just feels weird to watch. She says he's nothing without his watch and Benny Boy says nuh-uh and tries to prove her wrong but is met with a montage of life as a public school student. Kenny Boy opens up his locker and the insides are covered in gum. I bet he knows how it feels to chew 5 gum. His bullies show up around the corner and put him in his place, so he tries to fight back and ends up throwing a big ball of 5 gum at the principal. I would have projectile vomited all over the place like I was a sprinkler if I was him. Later, he's talking to his parents and they're trying to make him call them by their real names instead of mom and dad, which is weird because mom and dad are their real names. Who is Carl and Sandra? Ben says he only wants to hang out with his grandpa in his smelly motorhome. Guys, this is something child services should definitely know about. Just a suggestion. His parents piss him off, so he goes to touch grass. His grandfather is playing with a secret Mouska tool that'll be used for later. Benny Boy hops in the RV to complain about not being famous. Can't relate. And everyone should be loving him because of his powers. Grandpa teaches him a lesson about using his alien powers to impress people and to basically stop chasing clout. You're 10 years old. Enjoy your childhood while you can. It's all downhill from here. Run a Mr. Beast Stan account, you know? Make some regretful decisions that'll keep you up at night when you're older. At a clock tower, we see a cult gathering together and the biker helmet guy is still alive. How? I saw him die! A Foot Clan employee walks up to him, but he gets blasted away and ends up looking like the dead bounty hunter from Attack of the Clones. He blows a massive bubble and gazes at the fleet of starships heading towards Earth. We learn that he is not human and yaps about how he wants a 10-year-old to perish. This dude's gotta chill. Imagine having this much beef with a 10-year-old. It's like he's in an Xbox Live voice chat playing Modern Warfare 2 back in 2009. Later, Ben walks up to some girlies and tries to join the talent show. They bully him and make him feel terrible about himself, so he whips out his watch, but Gwen comes running over to hide it like he was about to pull out a gun. She makes up the excuse that they're magicians and the watch is part of the magic trick. They think it's lame, so the girls migrate north. After school, Ben goes to a restaurant and starts chit-chatting with the waitress. He sees Wild Mutt in a newspaper and asks the lovely gentleman if he can see it and hits him with an I don't know, can you? He finally gets a hold of the paper and people are constantly coming in to rip apart his feathers. First it's the bullies, then the talent show boogers. He goes outside to try and turn into forearms to teach them a lesson. This dude is literally plotting murder against his classmates. What would a giant 4-armed alien do in this situation besides murder? Have some tea and crumpets. He presses on the Apple Watch to turn into him, and this movie is definitely showing its age. What is this? This movie did not age like a grill. It looks like Xavier Renegade Angel. Instead of his plan working out, he turns into the Tylenol frog Gray Matter, but this gives him an idea. He turns off the power and vandalizes the diner by running around pulling wires out of everything. When he turns the power back on, every machine is in overdrive. Now all the food and drinks are assaulting the patrons, especially his bullies and the talent show goobers. Back at home, Gwen is on her PC and Ben jump scares her. She's looking through pictures she took of Ben earlier and notices a blur in one of the photos. Gwen does some super epic and cool swag hacking stuff like she's hacking into the mainframe and unblurs the photo. It turns out to be the Tron wannabe from earlier being a stalker. Grandpa arrives and they ask him if he knows knows who this guy is, and he enters a 1,000-yard stare while filling us in on so much lore. He says his name is Eon, and when he got captured 2 centuries ago, he was carrying an ancient doomsday device called the Hands of Armageddon. They immediately start cruising for a bruising in the Breaking Bad van and end up at a chem lab where it was used to test out alien technology. I feel like I'm doing a recap on Ancient Aliens. Gramps fondles a couple buttons in his box and opens the gate to the function. They mosey around looking for Eon and wander across a plumber named Constantine Jacobs. That has got to be the best plumber name I've ever heard. Mario, get out of here. They come across him and he looks like he's got the gluck gluck twist it pull it yank it bop it 9000, and somehow he's still alive. He grabs Ben and he retaliates by just yeeting his hand across the office, but Constantine isn't bothered by this. He tells them that Eon did this and he wants Tiny Boy dead for pimping too hard. Right before the lab homie expires, he tells them to make sure he doesn't go to the hardware store. They immediately head to Miller's Hard, and to unlock the door they have to turn the key 3 times to the left and flush the toilet handle for the elevator to show up. They go in the elevator and I don't know how they didn't notice the gargoyle perched right above them. They approach a big door and ring a doorbell to open sesame, and this turns out to be the plumber's headquarters. Ben meets the legendary plumbers, and this is like the Avengers. It's everybody we've seen so far. The waitress, the principal, yada yada yada, all these other people. They get a tour of the place and are shown the ancient weapon, the Hands of Armageddon. Ben asks why they haven't gotten rid of this abomination, and they said they don't have the sauce to do so. The first time they tried to, it created the Grand Canyon. The second time, it was the Chicago fires. The third time, they were forced to enter a Mr. Beast competition. Alarms go off because of an infiltration to the facility. There's a security breach. They all grab plastic ray guns and take action. Watching the legendary plumbers fight is like watching Herbert fight Franz in that one Family Guy episode. The bad guys do some parkour while trying to tussle, but they just get their tushies polished by the legendary plumbers. Tron appears out of nowhere, and he uses his pink powers to try and do something to the Hands of Armageddon, but nothing happens. Ben's lollygagging, and Gwen yells at him to go hero. He gets snarky but obliges, then the 10-year-old gets bear hugged by the adult. He takes him outside and makes the watch malfunction. Benjamin skedaddles out of there and hops on a bike to get away, but then Elon Musk turns on the car using his powers and chases after him. I don't know how, but he's able to outrun the car. The scene should have acted a lot more like the LA chase scene in Terminator 2. He gets cornered in an alleyway and tries to go hero, but his watch is still tripping. Eon begins his evil monologue about how he's a true gangster and that he's going to curb stomp this 10-year-old rodent. While threatening him, he explains that his people can manipulate time and his people need the Omnitrix. Eon tries to take the watch, but the old dude from the diner turns out to be a plumber and shoots Eon, making him disappear. This movie has such a small cast. There's at most 12 people, and they're reusing every person as much as possible. Ben goes back home and gets scolded by his parents, but he squirms his way out by saying he was practicing for a talent show. He goes to his room, and Gramps has been waiting for him for who knows how long. Hey yo, I'm telling you, this guy doesn't sit right with me. How did he get there first? Ben updates Grandpa about what I just told you, and he says that Eon needs the Omnitrix to power the Hands of Armageddon. He reassures Ben, letting him know that he doesn't have to do any of this if he doesn't want to, but Ben's built quite different and needs the action in his life. The next morning, Ben and Gwen notice they're surrounded by plumbers, so he goes into the gym to pout. The principal plumber pulls up to cheer Tiny Boy up. Ben says it's weird to talk to him now that he knows he's a plumber instead of an old creepy principal. He walks away, then does a 180 to say something, but time gets wacky and the principal goes slow-mo. He gets tossed away by an invisible force, and Ben's watch starts acting up again. Eon forces Ben up against the wall and he tries to steal the watch, but Ben pulls the fire alarm and sucker punches him in the side. He transforms into Diamond Head and drops some sick one-liners before blocking Eon's cosmic splooge. He shoots some shards at Tron Legacy and gets sent flying. Eon uses the students evacuating as an opportunity to escape, and Enderman whoops away. Ben heads to the girls' locker room to wait until he's able to change back to boy mode and runs off with Gwen to discuss the trauma that this 10-year-old is going through. Gramps arrives and says we gotta go, shit's hit the fan, then the RV gets nuked. Our heroes get kidnapped by Eon and all hell is about to break loose. Eon locked all the plumbers in a room and our main guys are tied up. Ben wakes up and calls out for his grandpa, acting like he doesn't know where he is, but he's literally 10 feet in front of him. He's in his line of sight. Gramps begs for him to let the children go, but Eon just keeps whining about wanting the Omnitrix. Ben's constantly saying nuh-uh, and this is just making him more and more angry. Tron Legacy gets weaker and weaker whenever he uses his powers, but with the help of the Omnitrix, he's able to cure his curse and bring back his people. Helmet Boy says his DNA is in the Omnitrix and that he is Ben. What? Ben says nuh-uh, but he keeps yapping about taking over Ben's body. He uses the Omnitrix to have Ben change into the form of Eon, and doing so makes Ben start ODing. Ben is now young Eon, and old Eon says two can't exist in the same world, then dips, leaving young Eon to cook. Young Eon is also a fan of super evil monologues and says he was tired of being stuck in a 10-year-old's body. This movie is getting so weird, like weirder than it already has been. Do you guys remember his struggles of being stuck inside a child's body? Young Eon gets his god complex going and says he can finally start his new world. Bro's acting like he's got the Infinity Gauntlet and activates the Hands of Armageddon. Now the fleet of enemy ships has entered Earth's atmosphere. Gramps asks Gwen to put her foot up his pocket and use some of his lasers to break him free. See what I tell you? Secret mouse tool for later. I don't know how this dude didn't hear any of this. He breaks Gwen's chains and takes a wire to electrocute young Eon. We cut to the principal popping up out of nowhere and frees all the plumbers, arming them with Nerf guns. Gramps uses the wires to force it into the Hands of Armageddon, and I can feel it. He's gotta say, I am Iron Man. Gwen uses a wrench to beat up the adult, and she tries to convince him that he's still the 10-year-old boy and not the creepy adult man walking towards her. She calls him an idiot and tells him to lock in, but he just tries to shoot her instead. He misses, and she begs for Ben to come back and continues her inspirational speech, but it's not working. He snags her defensive wrench, and right as he's about to kill her, all of the plumbers show up to put an end to the show. Somehow, young Eon has backup, and the Foot Clan put a stop to the plumbers. This distraction gave time for Gwen's yapping to get Ben to start fighting the brain of Tron Legacy. He uses the pink powers and gains aimbot to take out all of the Foot Ninjas. He transforms back into his 10-year-old self and sees that Grandpa has been getting electrocuted for a good 10 minutes now. Ben yelps out, but he says, it's okay, it's my time to go. Ben says, hell no, and with the power of friendship, he saves him by pulling him away, and the Hands of Armageddon turns off. That dude probably has so much radiation in him. He's going to develop stage 20 of so many different diseases. The alien fleets are logging off for the night, and the duo starts heading back to the talent show when all of a sudden time stops and Tron Legacy is back. He chucks Ben across the room, and the Omnitrix is working now, so he turns into off-brand Scooby-Doo when the Riddle gang runs out of Scooby Snacks and goes sicko mode on Eon. He's shredding his ass apart like he's making pulled pork. He uses Gwen's frozen body as a bat to hit Eon towards the Hands of Armageddon, demolishing it into a black hole. Gwen says, Mr. Stark, I don't feel so good, and I wonder why. They zoom to the talent show, and we see people showing off their different talents. The host announces the great Gwendini and her assistant, but no one shows up. She starts nagging some guy and apologizes to the audience, but gets cut off because Wild Mutt shows up and scares the entire crowd. Gwen calms him down by saying she's going to perform some abracadabra stuff. She covers Ben's ugly ass with a curtain, and he transforms back into good old Benny Tennyson. Everyone cheers, but they end up losing to the girls who were being meanies to him earlier. At least they were able to snag second place, but imagine bringing Paul the alien to a talent show and not getting first place. Was this as good as you remember it was when you were younger? Or did you also cry because you realized how naive you were? And now we're just adults with no innocence left. It was alright. There were some enjoyable parts, but I think it's going to be another film lost in time. Please remember to like, share, comment, and subscribe. Check out my last video on a sick action movie called Bahubali. It's about a guy trying to get laid, then somehow gets involved in a war that's just as epic as Infinity War. Thanks for 2,091 subscribers, and let's hope technology can advance so I can have my very own Omnitrix.